In our company, we don't use the word balance. I just don't think
Mhm.
that that is, and it's one of the things I speak on, like this myth of work-life balance, or that kind of golden nugget question. We call it juggling. You got one ball, you got two in hand, and you got a couple in the air, and this vision of some are rubber and some are glass. Some need more care than
Mhm.
others, and those look different to everybody. Back to our previous discussion about, it's a very personal decision of what to juggle, how to juggle. And so I don't believe, like, the whole thing about work-life balance. I just think it's not time well spent trying to figure out how do you balance.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Meaningful Revolution podcast, where we help you live more into the life that you've designed for yourself so you have more purpose, more passion, and more vibrancy in your life. Today, we're going to be talking about Tricia Dege, who is, for more than 25 years, has worked with businesses to improve their operational, strategic, and financial performance. Most recently, she's led finance operations and internal consulting for healthcare systems in Minnesota as the Senior VP and Chief Financial Officer. Previously, she served as a consultant for several large firms supporting client performance improvement initiatives. So she's known for her polished diplomacy, creating simple solutions to complex problems. And in 2021, she founded the Mom Mastermind to help businesses develop and retain mothers, to grow their leadership pipeline and create more executive women leaders. I am so excited to be talking with you today, Tricia. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean, for having me. I'm delighted to be here today with you and your audience. And you've had some previous guests that are good friends of mine in this, endeavor to bring meaning to the world. And so really pleased to be here.
Oh, thanks. Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about your, I'm going to call it mom leadership. I don't know, like bringing that into organizations.
Yep.
And living, into your purpose even more. So I guess, how would you describe it in a less clunky way than I just did? And why is it important to you?
Yeah. So I still find it a little clunky myself, to describe kind of the depth and breadth of what we do. But ultimately, what we are trying to do is, as you said, help businesses develop and retain all women, especially working mothers, so they have a stronger pipeline of women and get more women ultimately into the executive suite. And that's what we do for businesses, but at the core, it's really helping every client, the individuals that we work with, to redefine joy in career and motherhood. So I have lots of friends, including my best friend, who chose to stay home, and I'm 100% on board with that when that's what's in people's hearts and brings them joy. I think there are a lot of us too that find great meaning and purpose in the work that we do as well. But it is not an easy juggling act. And so I work with each individual to figure out what's the right amount of juggling for them that lets them have joy in both.
Wow. Okay, that sounds super impactful and fulfilling. Having, I guess, adjacently worked with a lot of educators the last couple of years that had
Yeah.
gone through a lot of stress and who tend to be women a lot.
Yep.
I know how important that is. So, how did you get into this topic, and why is it important for
Yeah.
you?
Well, I think ultimately I lived it. So when I was a VP already, when I had my two daughters, and they're close in age, they're 19 months apart. And so, and then moved on to senior vice president and CFO with kids in elementary school, and just trying to figure out how to do this well. And I'm lucky enough to have a mom who stayed home until I was in middle school with my brother and I. So, like, this great role model of a mother. And I knew I wanted to do both, but I really wanted to be there for my kids in a way that my mom was there for me. And so, through the kind of trial and error of doing that, I figured out some things, and I had a great career that I loved, and I worked with amazing people. I just started to have, that little like change itch, and it was a little bit before the pandemic. Like, I think I want to do something different. And through self exploration, just really realized that helping develop other leaders was what I was most passionate about. And that's then I went on the journey to figure out, okay, well, what does that mean? And I took a course, and then ultimately, like you, got certified as a high performance coach with Brendan Burchard. And I looked carefully at a lot of different programs, and what I found in Brendan's process, that we're taught to lead, is I could see in the things that we now teach our clients, those that I was successful and really good at, that made me successful. And then I could also see the things that were my weaker side. And had I had more development in that earlier in my career, I think that would have been really helpful. So my journey really is one of living it myself. And so once I was certified, I realized pretty quickly that I wanted to work with women. And then the pandemic hit, and we had mothers leaving the workforce, in mass, and it really
Mhm.
created a platform for this conversation around, we've got to bring more resources to the table. And I believe that, parental leave and equitable pay and flexible hours are all great things to do, but at the end of the day, every mother has a juggling act to do, and it's a very personal choice. And so that's my work, is to really work with them one-on-one to figure out what works for them and for their family, and for their relationship with their children.
Right on. And I love the focus on, there's not a one size fits all solution for
Yeah,
everybody,
right,
because circumstance is so different. If your company allows you to work from home, now, since we've all
right,
figured out Zoom and stuff, like that's one thing that could be helpful. Or maybe it's too chaotic at home and you got to work through
right,
that.
right.
um
Yeah. And
so,
very personal,
mhm.
is it important to you to have breakfast with your kids and put them on the bus, or take them to preschool, or be there for the PTA meetings, or do you have a spouse who stays home and they're going to do those things, and you're really fully and present on the weekend? And I think part of it is, there's no right and wrong, just as long as it's joyful and meaningful, to you, to each mom individually.
Yeah. So I'm curious now then, looking back at your journey, and I think this ties into a lot about what the Meaningful Revolution is about. Was there a time when you're looking at how you're living and it wasn't joyful for you, and you're like, oh, like, I know you said you lived this experience.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're comfortable sharing a little bit more of, like, was there a moment where you're like, oh, this is not what I wanted for myself or my family, for how I want to be in the world?
Yeah, I think, yeah, two examples. One was, I think I really did a lot of wrestling, when my first daughter, in that first year of her life. And I didn't, I was lucky to have a lot of flexibility. I asked when I went out on maternity leave for what is now called hybrid work, which was a big deal back then, to be in the office 3 days and 2 days at home. And my leaders were, I'm very grateful that they allowed that. And I think that allowed me a lot of the ability to juggle, the way I wanted. But I think that first year, just knowing how present and like always there for me, both my parents, but especially my mom, was that wrestling of like, I'm not doing that. I'm not here for every, waking moment, with my daughter, and just kind of wrestling through that and deciding that I was the best me, and the best mother doing something else. And I was in healthcare. So our mission was very strong and very meaningful. So I felt like I was doing something important when I was away from home. And then, when she was really little, and then especially when our second daughter came along, my evenings were for them and my weekends were for them. I had very strict rules. Sometimes I had to, drag out the laptop after they went to bed, and that was okay because they were sleeping. But really cautious and protective of that family time in the evening when I've been gone all day, and the weekends. But then I think there was another time when they got a little older. So they're in school and you got to run them to dance and softball practice and all the things. And my job had gotten bigger and a little more stressful. And I could feel some of that stress coming home with me. And I had to work really hard to stop leaving voicemails and thinking about work on my drive home, and just allow myself a little bit of peace and space to then come in the door and step out of business leader job and into, like, put my mom hat, my very patient mom hat on, despite what may have gone on, during the day. So create that time and space to really step into that very different role. So those are a couple of the times that I would say it was challenging. There was a little bit of wrestling to do.
Right. I'm curious, like, did you call on like your coaching side to kind of help you through? Like, I don't notice. I talk a lot about transition times between different roles and hats, and I picked up that you're like, okay, on the way home, I need to decompress so I can be ready and present for the next most important, the most important thing that's now in the evenings or the weekends. I'm trying to think, like, how did you? So you had those experiences where you're like, oh, I'm bringing work home or whatever. What did you do to kind of like flip it, right, to where you were, where you wanted to be when you were home?
Yeah. So I think in that stage that I was referencing, I could feel the angst when I got in the door, and I'm like, I just worked really hard. Without really knowing it, I wasn't into yoga or meditating or, any of that. I didn't really know. I just knew that I couldn't come in all amped up. Like, I just had to figure out how to breathe a little bit and come in. And then we had somebody taking care of the girls, and then we'd transition, and simple things like I need that transition conversation with her to be shorter because the kids are clamoring for my attention, and I just need to be real calm, and I need to quickly get into my, casual clothes, just little things to make that go faster so that I was more present for them more quickly after coming in the door in that phase. And then, I was in a community led by, somebody out of the life coach school then for the last 5 years. And that's where I think what you're talking about, the mindset switches, the really coaching yourself came along when I learned some of those tools from that group. Got way better at that, like catch it faster, feel the angst, like switch the thoughts, just a much more deliberate mindset shifting.
Awesome. So, all right, I love that's so, just want to honor that you're able to recognize it, pick up on it, and then develop more quickiness is the word that's coming to my head. It's not really a word, but being able to switch.
Yeah, and then the interesting thing too is, like, I don't want listeners to think like that I'm all Pollyanna or that I am that it's all perfection here either. The time I probably have to work the hardest is bedtime. We have a puppy and he gets the zoomies, where he's swirling around and the kids are dawdling, and I'm ready to like get in bed and get out a good book and slow it down. And those are times where I think I will breathe a little bit. I've found that, they say that your mind doesn't know the difference between practice and actual. And so I will rehearse like being calm and, following the bedtime routine and, keeping the kids on schedule in a very calm manner and just working really hard at that. And then I think like that future focus of remembering Um, it can be tough in the trenches for parents, but
Hmm.
these years are fleeting. I happened to be on a plane yesterday with a mom. She was in the middle seat, and then her daughter was on the window, and the mom needed to get up to use the restroom, and she asked would I keep an eye on the little girl who was sleeping and reassure her if she woke up while her mom was running back and forth. And I said, "Oh, sure." And so I was watching this little girl sleeping, and she's about 4 and a half. And my kids are now 11 and 12, and
Wow.
you miss those years when they're gone. They feel like you're all engaged when you're there, but then they start to grow up a little bit, and they need you differently. And just kind of honoring every phase of this journey as a parent and as a child, that it's going to go really fast, and each phase can be, really should be so beautiful. You just kind of work a little at it.
Right on. Yeah. It's all right. So I had a question from something you said before.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just kind of go there. So, um, you mentioned like having your bed routine. You had, and times passing quickly, being aware of that too, which I think before going backwards, I also want to highlight like knowing why it's important to be present. I'm sure it's not easy trying to turn off the work brain, corporate leader
Yep.
brain, then
Yep.
not try to corporate lead your children, because I'm sure that would go well. you
Yep.
know
Or my husband, he doesn't like it when
yeah. So that's cool to know that reason why it's important to do the work and have the fits and starts. And that leads into the next question. So, what do you do when you have? I know I have friends with kids, and bedtime can sometimes be the Wild West, where sometimes it's smooth sailing and everything goes to plan, and sometimes it all goes sideways. So, how do you handle those
Yes.
moments where um, it's not going to plan? Is it just like, and maybe it's not a big deal, or just like, oh yeah, we just deal with it and move forward, or
Yeah, I am somebody who believes that sleep is really important for children. And
yeah.
so I think for a lot of years I was absolutely militant about bedtime. Like the kids are in bed at this time and the lights are out and it's quiet. Somewhat for them, but also for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I knew I needed that time, and I'm somebody who requires a lot of sleep. So I don't stay up a ton later than they do. Um, but as they've gotten older, I think I've gotten just a little more flexible. My one daughter plays a number of sports, and often, she comes home for sport practice pretty close to bedtime, and she needs a shower, maybe needs to finish some homework,
Mm-hmm.
might need to just talk to me about something. And so, allowing some flexibility, and sometimes it's flexibility for one child and not like the other one's got to get in bed so I can focus on the other. But I think for my kids know the routine. um we've always said we just call it three things. Go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, and get your jammies on. And that's been the same since they were old enough to listen and know those words. And so when I say it's time for three things, kids can remember three things. And sometimes I think they were better in the kindergarten age than they are as preteens. But just they know what the schedule is. And then we do spend real intentional time with them. And so as they're getting older, they desire that really in direct one-on-one time, with both my husband when he's home. He's a commercial pilot, so he's not always here. They desire that time, and I find them moving a little faster. Like last night, I laid down by my daughter, and she said, "Mommy, I have something I want to talk to you." And there was something, on her mind that she really wanted to discuss, and so that will move them along a little faster. They're old enough to make that connection now.
Mm.
So I feel like they can find more things to dawdle on as they get older, but they're also smart enough to realize they'll get more time the more quickly they go. So the most important thing, though, I think, was around managing, how do I want to show up at
Mm.
bedtime? And it's not,
Yeah.
like crazy over bedtime and, everybody's all fluttered because mom's all flustered. It's really, bringing my best self to bedtime. And it wasn't always the case. And that was something I had to work at.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I keep thinking now that like my wife's a child therapist, and so part of some of the consulting and work she's done, like we've talked about, is like how to get kids to sleep, because sometimes you just need. I love the simple three things.
Yeah.
The three things you got to do. It's not this like, some people have spreadsheets of like how things are supposed to go, which is
Yeah.
insane. But Silicon Valley here, so that's probably part of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I
so
think keeping it
yeah,
simple is a really important principle too. Yeah.
yeah,
And keeping your cool. Yeah.
keeping your cool. I bet you that's
Yeah.
probably the hardest part of it all.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Especially sometimes I do like a really quiet, restful wind down period. And sometimes, um, I find myself now changing, a lot more social and emotional coaching and development as opposed to just reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's super important, I think, for those skills. But that's a whole other conversation we don't need to go
Whole
down.
different conversation. Yeah. You can find better experts than me on that. Okay.
Totally. All right. So I'm curious now. So I know you have that transition between, corporate leader and then, mom at home.
Yeah.
Are there any lessons that cross over from, raising kids back to the office? And I'm just curious. Like, I know that there's a separation, so I'm sure you probably have the transition. I'm guessing to work where you're kind of getting into work mode. But I
Yeah.
imagine that there's got to be like things that you learn about yourself raising kids, as part of this delicate balancing act that you can apply to, your profession.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a couple things that come immediately to mind, around that question is sometimes I can get into a really important, engaged conversation with them at bedtime. And now I'm willing to trade that, a few less pages of my book for really good quality time around the things that are on the minds of preteens. Because today's world, like, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And I have been amazed. My oldest started middle school last year.
Mm.
Amazed at the things that kids have to grapple with, that they hear about or experience out in the world and in school. And there's a lot to be present for at that time.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I do not envy the kids growing up right now with all the extra distractions and communications, and it's way more complex. Um,
It is.
and having some
It is.
friends that are teachers, like just how they're like, yeah, you don't understand how school is so completely different
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
going through it.
Yeah. And the
Oh,
roles of teachers, I think, are changing.
do you have a question for myself or one of the folks that have been on the podcast before? If so, head over to our Meaningful Revolution community area where you can ask questions, meet like-minded folks, get engaged in this conversation of living a life that you've designed for yourself. Because it's going to be much more powerful if we can do it together. I'd love to see you there. You can sign up for free at community.seanbutner.com, linked below in the show notes here for this podcast episode. So let's get back to it, guys.
Is really the idea of being a servant leader. So in healthcare, you're clearly about the health of the patients that you serve, the communities that you serve, and really stepping into my role as a mother, as serving these children that I was gifted with. And not every day for sure looked like that, but that is kind of how I desire motherhood to be for me, is really serving these children and their needs, and not every want and desire of theirs, but really helping to develop really great people. And I think some of that rolls back then into service at work and serving the leaders that were on my team. But the other thing, I would say, there's all this stuff, on LinkedIn and out in the media now about like, what is your superpower? And I had a superpower at work that I didn't, given your previous conversation, about bedtime and coming home time. My superpower at work was the ability to always maintain the ultimate calm and control. Like people knew that they couldn't rile me up. Like when a meeting went bananas, I would be the one that'd be like, okay, let's get this back on track. Like, I think we've got more commonality here. Like, that was a superpower. And the more I used that at work, the more I realized, oh, that could be really helpful at home. Why is it that I can stay completely calm, cool, and collected with my colleagues and in meetings? And, when we got stressful things going on at work, let's bring that, let's bring some of that home. But then I think too, some of the things that that are part of the high performance habits and the things that we coach, like sometimes people ask me like, okay, well, I get you're a high performance coach for business people, but like, I don't think of high performance mom. Like, that's not those words don't fit really well. Yeah. And I always say, like, the ultimate amount of courage, which is one of our principles, is raising another human being. That takes a lot of courage, like all these parental decisions that have to be made, with or without a partner every day. How do you want to educate your kids? What kind of values do they want? That takes a lot of courage. And then the other one, like, that's just a little more humorous, I think, is influence and persuasion. You need that in the workplace, but you need the ultimate amount of influence and persuasion with toddlers and with preteens. Like, those are great skills to bring home as a mom. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't think I can add anything onto that without sounding like a doof, so I'm not going to. So I did have another follow-up question for you, though. In previous podcast episodes, I've had a couple of doctors on, so people that have been in healthcare, yep. And some of the big struggles that they've had have been, it's such a service industry, or service leadership, and getting health outcomes for people. And that's a very serious thing because, yep. If you feel like you can't take your time off to take care of your kid, or to go on vacation, to rejuvenate, to take care of yourself, you don't, because people's lives potentially are on the line, or it's very, very high stakes, high pressure. Yeah. I'm curious then, how do you, because like raising kids, like you just said, is such an important, like, serious full-time, full contact sport type job. Having a full-time career where you're leading an organization where there's health outcomes for people outside of your team, I imagine. I know you're in more of the finance role, so maybe it's a little bit different, but still, like, that culture of we need to be on, we need to really make our impact here. As someone that is trying to find their mix, and maybe this is a way for the audience to kind of, if you're not a parent, it's still, how are you managing your job, your personal life, your health, and taking care of yourself? How do you think through that? I'm just a little curious.
Yeah. Well, before I answer that question, I do want to hit on, kind of honoring the heroes in healthcare that were on the front lines. It is different. We have the same mission. We want the same outcomes, but it's different when you're a nurse head to toe in pandemic care, or a physician in surgery, or, just a mental health professional trying to keep up with all of the needs today. So I will honor them by saying it is a little bit different. But at the same time, what I work with my clients on is related to high performance, as well as purpose, priorities, and plans. That you really got to figure out what's your purpose. And so understanding, like, why are you doing what you do? What is the legacy you want to leave? What does that mean? And being super intentional about that. And I think a lot of people live very intentional lives, but then when there's a little bit of chaos or decision making about, what am I going to do with this next hour, or this half day, or this season of life, it just doesn't connect it, and they look back and say, oh, I didn't spend that time the way I wanted. So I think purpose is really important, and great clarity around that. And then I think knowing your priorities, and I actually have my clients go through ordering those. So and there's a maximum of 10, and what's going number one? Is that you? Is that your kids? Is that your spouse? Is that your faith? Like, what is that's number one? So that when it all falls apart, some afternoon, you're like, okay, but wait, what is really the most important thing now? And every day may look different, but it's like a roadmap for how do I want to make these decisions when they need to be made. And then, like the rubber hits the road on daily, weekly, monthly, annual plans around, okay, so there's only so much time in the day. How are you going to spend that? And it's we talk a lot about productivity, in high performance. It's not always doing more. It's like, do you have to get somebody to help with the yard work or the cleaning or the running kids around, so that you have really intentional time for the conversations that matter, and the time to be real intentional with your kids and your family and the people that you love. One of the things that I found when I switched from my corporate role to my business was I found myself belly laughing with my kids more. I just had so much more time and space for what was most important to me. And it was really clear to me in those first couple months, like, wow, I thought my life was really good. I just wanted to do something different, but it opened up just lots more time and space to be the mom that I wanted to be.
Awesome. I'm so glad that that transition was able to happen, and that you're able to live into that, which gets me into this next question. So as someone that's a huge advocate for women in the workplace and moms in the workplace, or moms in life in general, is probably more general than that, right? I don't want to narrow it down too much. What's a belief that you hold about moms in the workplace that maybe other people in your topic don't have, or something that's kind of against the grain?
I think there are several.
Excellent.
So first, and these are probably the places where I'm most outspoken. It's in our company, we don't use the word balance. I just don't think that is, and it's one of the things I speak on, like this myth of work-life balance, or that kind of golden nugget question. We call it juggling. You got one ball, you got two in hand, and you got a couple in the air, and this vision of some are rubber and some are glass. Some need more care than others, and those look different to everybody. Back to our previous discussion about, it's a very personal decision of what to juggle, how to juggle. And so I don't believe, like, the whole thing about work-life balance, I just think it's not time well spent trying to figure out how do you balance. We work with our clients to find joy. So juggle your life with ultimately getting to joy. I hate the saying, and I do find that women do still tell each other this: you can't have it all. Living proof that that's a myth. It may not be easy, but you can have it all. I had someone tell a whole room of students when I was in graduate school, you can't have it all, because she didn't. That wasn't the choice she made, and I was like, ooh, I'll prove you wrong. That really stuck with me. That's not good advice for women to be giving one another. And I also don't like, you can have it all, just not all at the same time. I don't believe that either. So those are the couple of things that I think are really problematic in today's workforce. I do think that we're on the precipice of something really different with women helping other women. I do think we've got to be telling more stories, offering more resources, and be much more candid about what it takes to be successful in the workplace while showing up as the mom you want to be. Like, there's just got to be more conversation. I do think, for the most part, this thing of we ask women to work like they're not moms and to mother like they don't work, I think that is very true. And while I have a lot of latitude and amazing support at work, the juggling, it does fall to you. And I see a lot of posts, especially, I spend quite a bit of time on LinkedIn, like reading and picking up, tips and tricks and things in the media. I think there's this kind of asking of society or corporations to solve for this. And I think that's going to be a long wait. And so when I talk with clients, especially prospective clients, it's all about, let's put the tools in your hands. If your company is supportive, awesome, that will make the road much smoother. But it's really not your corporation that's running a business to make a margin and employing you. It's not really their job to solve for your motherhood choices and challenges. They can make it easier, and I admire corporations that do. But I think it's really the onus needs to be on every individual who chooses to be a mother and to work, to own that choice and really work to make it joyful for them.
I love that. So I also have had a problem with the word like work-life balance, because you immediately think 50-50 or whatever, but it's more of what's the right ratio for you. I like your analogy of juggling, and I think that's a lot more elegant. I know also that keeping up with economics, how rough the pandemic was on women in particular, shaking them out of organizations. And that's a huge problem, I think, from a perspective, just having a diverse opinion in, an organization, and especially leadership, which is why I really appreciate the work that you're doing, because it is super important. And I also love the idea, and I'm always talking about, we have agency in our lives. We are always making a choice, and leaving it up to others is a choice. And it's a recipe for being miserable. So So I was wondering, as you've been researching things on LinkedIn and stuff, do you think there's a 2 or 3 folks out there kind of in the similar field that you are, that are doing things really well, and what do you think makes them that way?
So I think that I think there's a lot of good work out there, we're all on different tangents of the topic. And her name is going to escape me, but the gal who leads Girls Who Code, who also wrote the Marshall Plan for Mom. I think that she's got a good platform. I think that she's immediately working on more those earlier things we talked about: parental leave, childcare, flexible hours, those kinds of things. And I think those are good leaders. Then I think then comes the the personal development part of it too. I think more broadly, I think Chief is doing good work in offering a forum to really help women rise. And that's something that we believe in. I think it's not accessible for a lot of people because of the costs, but I think for those who can afford it, it will pay dividends. You've got the Mom Project and Bus Stop Mamas and other organizations that are really getting into companies to say, I can bring you a supply. You're looking for people to fill your roles, and I can bring you a strong supply of women who have amazing juggling skills and multitasking skills, because they are mothers, and making that easier to do. And a lot of those are focused on flexible hours, especially Bus Stop Mamas, around flexible hours for mothers who want to be, that's their name, at the bus stop to put their kids on, and get them off the bus, and they really want to work those hours in between. So I think there are a lot of, I'm probably missing a few really important ones, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind. I think there's just this platform for voices and realization that we have to do this better, and we want to do this better. This is
Mhm.
better for businesses. It's better for employees or workers or leaders that are working moms, and it's better for our kids. Joyful parents who are engaged and confident and joyful. That's good for children and their development too. So
Right
yeah, I think
on.
there's a lot out there.
But I love all of those organizations. Like I wanted to make this point before that, you talk about how giving people the tools to not wait for corporations to really manage and juggle things better themselves.
Yeah, yeah,
But I also wanted to point out that it's in organizations' best interests to tap these very competent, amazing people. And I come from tech, so like you can code from anywhere, and
yeah.
there's some amazing people who happen to be women. That sounded really weird, but what basically what I'm saying is like the pandemic shifted how we worked. And I fundamentally believe that the companies that
Yeah.
will thrive and excel are going to be the ones that adapt to workers' schedules and needs a lot more than traditional corporate. Like you're there at 7 in the morning, you leave at seven
For
in the
sure.
afternoon.
For sure. And
So,
I think, the thing that I found in regard to that is those moments are important. None of us
yeah.
are going to live endlessly,
Mhm.
especially when my kids were little. Like, I didn't want our daycare provider or my husband to be the only faces that the preschool teachers saw. And people were like, why is dropping your kid off at preschool? Like, you're just dropping them off. I'm like, I'm engaged with them on the ride. I'm engaged
Yeah.
with their teacher. I know how it's going. I know what they're learning here. Showing up for the kids' Christmas. And I didn't make every single event, but I went into this journey saying like I'm not going to look back and miss anything that was important to me. Um, I thought I would be a PTA mom, like ooh, that like leadership stuff is kind of my jam. Didn't work. It was at 4 o'clock on Mondays, and there was just no way,
Ugh.
no how that was going to happen. So I had to pass on that one, and I started we called it the what do we call it? A Girl Scout troop that was not every week like all the others. It was once a month, and the moms rotated in and helped me. We had to find a way to do it different so that I could do those things, but not the way somebody else said to do them, like brownies every week. It was nope, we can do once a month, and we'll do like super cool fun things, but less of it. And that worked for me, and that worked for the working moms who had their kids in
Mm.
my troop. So just kind of that finding a different path sometimes to the things that matter to you.
Yeah. But the innovation and creativity of like, oh, I can design the space to cater to what I need. Um,
Yep.
is
Yep.
such, yeah, it's such a good thing that I hope people, if you're listening, take that away. If you're a mom, if you're a parent, if you're just, someone out there in the world, that we can design and change our lives.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so I was curious then, if someone were to, a mom or, working parent, wanted to, like, okay, they have made a decision, like, okay, something needs to change. How do I, as a beginner, start to juggle things a little bit better, a little bit more in tune to me? Do you have like two or three habits or suggestions or strategies to really help them get started in being a better juggler of all the things?
Yeah. So, so the starter for me is really, we talked about, defining your purpose, knowing your priorities, and crafting your plans. And on our website at www.mommastermind.com, you can download an article that gets into more detail of how I see that, and some funny examples and things. But I think it really starts there. Like, what do you want your legacy to be? How do those priorities line up for you? And then drafting your plan. I call it drafting. drafting or drafting your plans, knowing that they're gonna wiggle, a little bit every day, but seeing the things that you can do with the time that you have and the things that just gotta go. So that's where I have people start, and then I think that base of purpose, priorities, and plans help when the inevitable snafu happens, schedule change happens, decision has to be made. It's like, okay, now I have a framework for this, as opposed to the, kind of wild and woolly circus that can be every day.
One of the best parts about having a podcast is getting to interact with people you hadn't met before. And I'd love to invite you into our Meaningful Revolution community by going to community.seanbutler.com, linked below in the show notes. And there you can ask questions, you can meet like-minded folks, we can start working on building a movement together where we all are living into our best selves, because that's what it's all about. So click the link in the show notes below, again, community.seanbutler.com, if you're interested. Hope to see you there. This is Sean saying continue with the episode.
And then for me, the habit that's most important to me, and one that I think we don't talk about a whole lot. We don't teach this to kids, but it's thought work and journaling. And I would say, again, students through a community of someone out of the life coach school, a real accomplished coach there, that I feel like I learned that really late, but it's very important to my practice of staying a high performer. And it takes me about 5 minutes a day. It's very quick. It is not Dear Diary. It does not take hours. I was massively resistant to this topic until, the coach that I follow put this practice into our daily work. It was like, this is part of the plan, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to give this a shot. And now I wouldn't trade it for everything. It's just and simply it's journaling what's in your head. You just get it out all on paper. I spent about 3 minutes doing that. Now it took longer in the beginning, and then really finding the thoughts that you jot down that don't serve you, and figuring out, for those that don't, what are you going to do with those thoughts? And I think this is a whole practice that takes time and effort. And those that do serve you, like, oh, I really, I think that about myself and about my spouse and my kids, and I love them, and all the things that are good, giving those more airtime and less airtime to the negative and critical thoughts, and sometimes switching those out for thoughts that serve you better. And that is work that I learned very late, in my career. And this motherhood journey, but it is the stuff now that fuels my best self, is figuring out, you don't just let everything in your head. And I feel like this gets sort of ethereal. But remember, I'm a CFO, and so I really only like things that are practical and efficient and effective. But thought switching, I think, is really an important skill, and that is one of the things I work with my clients a lot on. Is like, you said or wrote this, like, let's explore that. Like, does that feel like, when you say that about yourself or this situation or that person, like, does that feel good? Okay, well, if not, let's make some changes there and start to think and act differently.
Yeah, that is such an important habit that took me a while to learn also as a coach. There was a time early on in my career where I was like, student loans, like doing the whole bill shuffling thing, working for forever. Every day I'd wake up with this thought, like, I hate my job. And that would just kind of be the mantra. And it was journaling and realizing, like, oh, I'm thinking this quite a lot, just that little bit of awareness of like, okay,
Yeah.
like, how can I like do the Indiana Jones thing where like switches the statue for the sack of sand, and then run like hell to try to change. And it was just a simple language thing of like, I don't love my job yet,
Yet,
and
right.
and it melted all this stress that I was putting on myself, where it's like, oh, if I don't love it yet, it means that I could, and if I can, now it's a problem to solve versus a state of being. So
Absolutely.
I also
The other one I really like is, I'm just thinking that. So
Mm.
I'm just thinking I don't want to work out today, which leaves it open that, oh, I think the door open, like, and maybe I really do want to get that done because I said I would, or I know it's in my best friend. I'm just thinking that I like yet. Um,
Well, that's
there are
super
there
good.
are several of those. I think just quick add-ons that just give you a little more latitude to
Yeah.
think or do differently.
Awesome. I'm gonna steal that. I'm just thinking dot dot dot. So that's in my notes. Cool. All right. Finishing up. I'm curious, like, what habits keep you on purpose every day, every week, or every month in driving your business and being the best mom possible and juggling being the best, most efficient juggler, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, as you know, somebody who used to ask my husband, like, snooze incessantly. I am now very intentional about that first hour of my day.
Mm.
So journaling is a practice, starting to drink water right away in the morning to, get my body moving, getting a little bit of exercise. Um, I also as a mom, and so my practices are, like I take the dog for a mile or a mile and a half. That's all, that's what we've got time for right now. My journaling, as I said, is like 5 to 10 minutes. Like we're like whipping through about six things in 20 to 25 minutes. So these are not like endless, I don't have this luxurious life where this takes forever.
Right.
Uh, but I would say that morning hour. The other thing that I do pretty regularly, I do it every morning for 1 minute, literally set the iPhone timer for a minute, is just silence, a minute of silence,
Mm.
which I can really now calm myself significantly with 1 minute. I can, find stress in my face or my jaw or my shoulders and get that released. If things are amping up at home or at work, 1 minute. And I used to think, well, I don't have time for all that. Like, I don't have time to meditate or go do yoga practices or anything during the day. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can really make a lot of headway with a minute. And sometimes I think as moms, 1 minute of silence is a very joyful thing. I look forward to that in my morning, like that 1 minute of just shh. Um,
That's awesome.
so I think the morning, and we talked about journaling and thought work and really being intentional, and then I am a big believer. One of my favorite books out there is No Regrets Parenting,
Mm.
and so I am very intentional about the time with my kids. So, that those few minutes when they first come home, if they've got something to say, I've got one who wants to tell me every step of her day. And then I've got not another one who's my older daughter, I think just, it's like it was good or it was bad. And then she needs some time and she talks to me about it at bedtime. So different, but just being present when they first get home, if that's possible, in a work day. Um, and then, just carving out those very special moments. One of the things in No Regrets Parenting is you get 960 Saturdays with your kids. And so
Wow.
when you put a number on it and you think, oh, just that reminder that they won't always be here, those fun things that you want to go do with them, they won't always want to, and they won't be, living with you forever. And just thinking about it, and again, like, what's that legacy or that relationship or that memory that you want to establish. The book talks a lot about, and not just like the big fancy things you do, like a huge trip, but the routines and the traditions that you set, that
Mm.
that those are the things that you and your children will remember.
Right. It's so true. I often it's how we're recording this right around Halloween, and some of my favorite memories growing up were we would always make Halloween decorations with my mom because that's what she did growing up. So
Yeah.
we make Play-Doh and little like pumpkins, and like
Yep.
we paint them and stuff. And that was the tradition every Halloween, and like watching like Disney spooky things like the skeleton dance and stuff like that.
Yep.
It
We
is.
fondue caramel apples. Like that's
Oh.
like that was a big thing. I still see those little rock caramels, and I remember unwrapping like this huge pile of those because it took a bajillion of them to put in the fondue machine. And yeah, those things are super memorable to kids. You know, we have practices and we celebrate Christmas, and so there are things that we do at Christmas that my kids, like if I tried to take one of those out, they wouldn't know what to do if we didn't do that thing, you know, and 4th of July and, you know, all the things that I think make for really special memories of these many years that go fast, you know, things that they'll remember.
And it always goes quicker than you think. That's
Yep.
So, all right, with that said, Tricia, people can follow up with you on mommastermind.com, like you mentioned before. And it's Mom Mastermind on Instagram and all the socials, correct?
Correct. LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Yep.
All right. I'll have links in the show notes below when this releases. I'm so grateful we had this really important conversation. Again, I really admire the work that you're doing out there.
Thank you.
It is super important to make sure that we're moving everyone forward in this new crazy world that we find ourselves in. And so, super great.
And likewise, I think the work that you're doing is really important because, I mean, for all of us to find meaning and joy, you know, in what we're doing, and that's kind of the ultimate gift.
It really is, and it's the hardest thing to pull off. And it's easy at the same time. But that's
little baby steps. That's right.
A whole other thing. All right.
Thanks for having me.
I love this episode with Tricia because we all have to manage huge responsibilities in our lives, whether that's, you know, being a CFO for a large corporation in health or being a parent. And, you know, the idea is that we have to know what our priority is, what to juggle, what are the things that we can drop, what are the things that are glass that we need to make sure we don't drop, and thinking through how do we delegate, how do we design our lives as parents, as business owners, as, you know, people that want to be healthy out there in the world. How are we managing, prioritizing that, and feeling authentic when we have to make choices that, okay, family first above work, or this project first and get that finished before I can do working out, or however that works out for you. So I hope you do check out Tricia at mommastermind.com. Again, all her social and links are below in the show notes for this episode, wherever you're listening to it. And also, I'd like to share with you, we are starting a new community space where you can ask questions, meet each other, and there'll be some other things that are being built out as we go forward, but you can sign up for free at community.seanbutner.com. Again, that is also linked below in the show notes. I'd love to hear your questions, get your feedback, get into a discussion about starting your meaningful revolution, because at the end of the day, the idea is to help inspire you to live more into your passions, to live more into the great life you know you can have for yourself. And I know that you can have for yourself too. So, love to connect, love to hear what you have to say. So again, SeanButner.com, or it's community.SeanButner.com, linked below. Hope to see you there. Say hi, introduce yourself, get into the discussion, and see you there, guys.